女孩震惊地发现，女朋友正光着屁股坐在地上。此时她还没意识到自己陷入了一起奇葩的强奸案中。很快，女孩就帮忙报了警。但当警察赶到后，女友安却含糊其辞，结果惹得女孩大喊：“你是被性侵了！”
She was raped. She would never let a man have sex with her. She is a lesbian.
却不料安竟是满脸吃惊，警察也一时摸不着头脑了。随后，女孩向警方讲述，安是信教的，可她被教会洗脑了，被迫相信 gay 是种罪孽。但今晚我发现安后，她确实说了，是她强迫我的，我失去了贞洁。而安则表示有个男人敲开了我的门，可当时太暗了，我并未看清他的脸。接着他就让我躺床上，我不愿意。
Can you tell me what happened next? He pulled my skirt up, and I said no, and then I tried to fight him off, and then he had sex with me anyway, and I would never have sex with a boy.
Because you're a lesbian?
No, I'm saving myself for marriage. I'm a virgin.
但警察疑惑，你女伴刚才还说呢。不料安否认了，自称虽然对女伴有感觉，可不会付诸行动，那是罪孽。此时警察终于明白了，果然安被教会洗脑了。而就在将安送到医院后，教会的牧师闻讯赶了过来，正好警察向他打探起了可疑人物。哪知牧师还真想起，曾有2个小哥曾搭讪过安，于是警察立马将睡梦中的2人给喊了起来。却不料2人都有不在场证明，并提到安的男友就在现场，而这倒是一个新的线索。可不成想，男孩永强否认是男友，自称只是安教会的朋友。但当警察说出安被性侵后，他竟出奇的震惊，大喊那不是强奸，我永远不可能性侵别人，居然是不打自招了。可警察却有点懵，谁知永强竟解释那是治疗型爱，我是在拯救他的灵魂。这又是什么奇葩理由？2人更加不明白了。不过可以肯定一点，这事就是永强干的。而这时安也承认了，永强认为自己做了对的事，所以我才不能告诉你是他做的。他是要治疗我对女伴的感情，因为 gay 是种罪孽，永强是在拯救我。然而警察可是依法办事的，不得不重申，只要你不同意，那就是强奸。可安却是不赞同，即使警察强调这是法律规定，但安坚称却不是上帝的法则。同时永强也不认为自己是性侵，虽然警察也提到了安不同意，他不想做。
No, she wanted to.
She told you this?
She didn't have to. I know she didn't want to be a homosexual. No one does.
Well, she told us she didn't want you in there and that she said no.
Even if she did, it wouldn't have mattered.
Why is that?
Because we're taught not to heed the words of the devil. It's not done with hate or anger. It's done with love. The world is filled with temptations, but when a woman feels the full glory of God inside her, she sees the true path.
Full glory, huh?
Being one with a man as God intended. When a woman feels that, she's brought back to God's will and understands her role and needed to be saved.
然而不管永强怎么强调理由，警察都认定他已经坦白了。可谁知这时牧师突然来到了，并为永强请了一名律师，要为他做无罪辩护。同时牧师也赞同治疗型爱，表示这是永强和安对宗教信仰的表达。但警方可不管什么信仰，他们必须依法办事。不料牧师也很强硬，直接放话那就法庭上见。结果警方先没了信心，因为安不想起诉，他认为那是对自己的治疗。律师极可能将性侵美化成双方自愿，于是检察官指示必须让安看到真相，让他站到我们这一边来。而这个艰巨的任务当然由本森来完成了。随后本森开始耐心引导起了安，一点点帮他剥离被灌输的扭曲理念，最终让安认清了自己遭受的伤害，当然也就答应出庭指证了。
And he was afraid that I'd given to temptation. He said that I needed to feel the full glory of God's purpose to overcome that lust.
How did you respond?
I said that I could resist on my own, that I didn't need him to do that, and he pushed me on the bed.
And then what happened?
He pulled up my skirt, and he forced himself inside me. And I said no and tried to fight him off, but he didn't stop.
对此，检察官按照法律定性，不同意就是强奸。哪知律师竟然辩护，永强和你是朋友，他到你房间后你也没叫喊求助，他没有携带任何武器，也没阻止你离开。哪知等你的女朋友来到后，你也没说遭到了性侵的话，也没打算报警，可却是他违背你的意愿报了警。结果急得安赶紧辩解，他是为了帮我。一下整的律师无语了。不成想就在这时，突然一份新证据传到了律师手里，而由于这超出了既定程序，所以检察官需要先审查。法官毫不犹豫同意了。哪知这竟是一段录像，里面永强在对安洗脑，加上牧师在一旁诱导，使得安接受是因为一时难以承受，才承认被性侵的。最后牧师将2人之间发生的事定性为了是上帝的旨意，然后3人一起祈祷冰释前嫌了。结果这可把检方气坏了，这样一来案子肯定输了，这明显就是以宗教为幌子的性侵。而果然接下来牧师就出庭作证，称我事后找2人谈过了，永强对安没有恶意，安就原谅了永强，也理解他的做法是正确且神圣的。
Lucas should not be made to suffer for saving Anne, for being a messenger of God's will.
And is it your impression as as Anne's spiritual counselor, that she wanted to be saved from homosexuality?
Absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind. We discussed it on many occasions.
Reverend, one last question. As head of the church, is it your belief that God condones, mandates, curative intercourse?
Yes.
总之，律师就是试图用宗教自由掩盖恶行，可检察官不会让他得逞的。当即指出，既然安原谅了永强，那他肯定是做了什么错事。给予原谅就是说明已经出现了需要获得原谅的犯罪或违法行为。对此，牧师还想狡辩，不料却被怼了。
This is not about beliefs. It's not about God. It's not about homosexuality. It's about a crime. It's about a woman who says no, and a man rapes her anyway.
这下牧师彻底哑口无言了。然后就是永强接受质询了，他自称这是上帝让做的事。虽然安很害怕，我也很害怕，我俩之前从没做过这种事。
But I knew it was my responsibility to free her from sin, so I laid her on the bed.
Did she resist?
She was tense. It wasn't easy, but I believe she knew what had to happen, what Reverend Gary and what God wanted us to do.
Lucas, what happened afterwards?
She was crying a little. She was upset. I was too. It was really difficult for the both of us. And then she told me that she understood why I did it and that I should go.
并且在警察找到我后，我说了实话，句句属实。不料检察官则拿出了安的证词，上面明显与永强说的相反。他对警察明确表示被性侵了，哪知永强竟声称安并没有说谎。
She was experiencing a union with God. It's what happens. It's like Reverend Gary says, resist the devil and he will flee from you.
So she was resisting.
Her demons were resisting, and sometimes you have to fight through them to save someone. And if I'm the one that has to pay for it, so be it. But I love Anne. I would never want to hurt her.
You did.
对此，永强无法辩驳。然而就在休庭期间，本森和检察官却发现被告方好像很高兴，他们立马察觉到问题出在牧师身上，应该是牧师命令永强去性侵安的，因此只要找到这方面的证据，就可以打赢这场官司了。然后他们就查到永强初3就辍学了，接下来的1年里都和牧师住在一起，接受他的家教。至于住一起的原因就不知了，只知道是为了避免永强再惹麻烦。虽然没有掌握全部，但警方还是就此和永强谈起了协议。他们相信牧师才是指使者，因此希望永强说出俩人住在一起的原因，看是否有把柄在牧师手里，这样可以为永强开脱。而永强也很诚挚。
I got into trouble at school.
Who decided you should live with Reverend Gary?
He did. It was the best thing that could have happened. I learned so much. He taught me to trust in God's plan.
You here on trial for rape? That seemed like part of God's plan to you?
It has to be.
He told you that you had to live with him. He told you to quit school.
Not just me, there were others.
Did he ever ask you to perform curative intercourse before?
You don't understand him or us. He showed me the path to righteousness.
可警察一听就知道，牧师确实以前让他做过，但永强不认为牧师错了。
He told you to assault Anne.
He saw Liddy with her. He knew she was in trouble and that we were out of time.
So he ordered it specifically.
No, he saved me. He's not the sinner. I am. It was my penance.
终于说到点子上了，警察赶紧问是什么惩罚，不料永强竟难以启齿了。
Anne didn't just confide in me because we're friends. We succumbed to the same temptation.
警察立马露出了迫切的眼神。
I never got into trouble at school. Reverend Gary caught me one night with a friend, a boy.
这下大家算是明白了，原来永强竟是一名 gay， 而在牧师眼里他也是原罪，也是一名可怜的受害者。现在警察也明白了，这所谓的治疗竟是双向的，永强和安都在接受治疗。而这时警察又有了新线索，他们查了教会的银行账目，发现在教会的6个孩子每月都会收到200块的津贴，并且已经持续好几年了。而这立马让检察官怀疑，这些孩子可能是因为进行了治疗型性侵获得了报酬。如果真是这样，就属于卖淫了，那就是重罪了。于是警察当即决定以此来胁迫牧师就范。然而面对审讯，牧师仍是坚称那是在拯救他们，根本不是犯罪，试图用宗教自由掩盖恶行。见状，警察也不废话了，当即指出你让永强性侵安是卖淫。律师却不屑一顾，于是警察只好给他们好好说道了，同时威胁卖淫是重罪 ，FBI 可直接进行调查，并且他们首先会没收教堂里所有资产。结果牧师当即反驳，教会可是做了很多慈善。对此警察也认同，不过也看出教会是牧师的心血，因此仍是不断恐吓要没收教会每一分钱。最终牧师撑不住了，他不想自己的教会因此毁灭，决定牺牲自己拯救教众，接受了认罪协商，承认是自己唆使了永强对安的强奸。最后永强也接受了认罪协议，会被判1至4年徒刑。他郑重向安道了歉，但安没有完全恨永强，也没有彻底原谅他，他只是慢慢走出了教会的阴影，开始重新认识自己，接纳自己，不再被同性恋是罪的扭曲理念束缚。这场迟来的清醒，或许是他自我救赎的开始。